when it wasn't fashionable, Willie, back in the summer, to be getting in a fight over NSA metadata collection, which ended yesterday and has made us weaker and less able as an intelligence community. I was fighting that fight because I understood, based on my experience as a U.S. attorney, that this is necessary to protect the homeland. We got to focus on protecting the American people first.
Is Ted Cruz's position and Rand Paul's position on collecting metadata made America less safe?
Yes.
That was presidential candidate Governor Chris Christie on Morning Joe last week with his take on the recent NSA reforms and their impact on national security efforts. Joining us from Capitol Hill, one of the senators Christie referred to, Republican presidential candidate Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning.
So why don't we start there? Any change of heart on the NSA data collection program, or maybe a middle ground?
A lot has happened since Chris Christie made those comments.
Well, you know, there will always be people like Christie that are very willing to give up your liberty for a false sense of security. But, you know, we've studied this issue, and we found that the bulk data collection program didn't catch any terrorists and didn't prevent any attacks. The court looked at this. One court level below the Supreme Court, the Circuit Court, looked at this and found it to be illegal. And there is a big question here. Are we willing to give up all of our privacy? Are we willing to give up the idea that warrants should be individualized and allow data to be collected without anyone's name on the warrant? What Snowden revealed was that we were collecting all of Verizon's records on all Americans. Not that we had suspicion, not that we were targeting our research or targeting our collection of records. I think it's actually made us less safe, because I think the haystack is so large that we're getting lost in the haystack. I would like to target the people who are coming here to attack us. And I think people like Rubio and Christie and Bush, they're not willing to defend the border. And I think really we shouldn't have let this woman in from Saudi Arabia or Pakistan. We need to have some limits on who come to visit us. We need to make sure they're not intent on attacking us.
Okay.
That's how we defend the country.
And we can argue that. But what about the investigation as it stands now? I mean, isn't there something to be learned from?
Yeah, I think we should learn. Yeah, I think we should learn that we can't have open borders. And I've been advocating for several years now that students, immigrants, visitors, potential fiancés, all of them need more scrutiny. In my hometown of Bowling Green, Kentucky, we admitted 2 refugees. One of them was already in the database with the fingerprints on a bomb fragment, and we didn't know it because we weren't doing adequate vetting. I still don't think we have an adequate handle on who is and who are coming to visit us.
So, Senator, we just showed an AP story that said that the United States can't access the phone records, NSA phone records in the California terror case because, of course, that law was changed. Would you be willing to seek a middle ground? We had actually Governor Huckabee on earlier today saying that the government can collect the data, but you can't access it unless there is probable cause. Is that possibly a middle ground?
The Fourth Amendment's pretty clear on this, and for people to say you cannot access their records, they're just wrong. All you have to do is get a warrant. You can get any record you want once you have an individual's name and suspicion or probable cause, so it's just wrong. The other thing to keep in perspective here is the bulk data collection program has been ongoing for the last 6 months and really for the last decade. So the Boston bombing happened while we had the bulk data collection. The Paris tragedy happened while we have it. And also in France, they have the bulk collection, but on steroids. They have a program 1,000 times more invasive. So the question, is there any limit to how much liberty people, authoritarians like Christie, are willing to give up? I don't think there's any limit. They'll come back to you next week and say, we want more. Give us more of your freedom. Give us more of your freedom. We'll protect you. The bottom line is we can't have complete security, but we sure can give up our freedom. And will it have been worth it if we're no longer who we were, or we defend what's special about America in the process of defending the country?
Senator, there's a new poll out, CBS poll, that says over 60% of Americans now support sending ground troops to defeat ISIS. 63% now support ground troops necessary to remove the threat of ISIS. Ted Cruz last week said that we didn't have any stake in the Syrian civil war, that we didn't have a dog in that fight. First of all, do you disagree with that? And secondly, are you with the majority of Americans who say we should send more ground troops in to defeat ISIS?
I think we have to try to learn from history. And if there's one thing we can learn from the Middle East, regime change hasn't worked. You got people like Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio who have advocated regime change in Libya, Syria, Iraq, you name it. But it hasn't worked. Every time we've toppled a secular dictator, we've gotten chaos and the rise of radical Islam. So this really needs to be a big debate. I want to be part of it because you know what? I think when the American people hear the failure of our foreign policy in the Middle East, maybe they will choose another way.
So should Assad stay in power based on that formula of what we've learned in the past?
I think you have variations of evil on both sides of the civil war. Assad on one side,
right.
Al-Qaeda, ISIS, al-Nusra, radical Islam on the other side. And I don't think there's a victor there that we should say, oh, we're going to be a lot better off if Assad's gone. If Assad had been gone, like McCain and Graham and all these other people who want perpetual war, if we had toppled Assad a year or two ago, like Obama wanted, McCain wanted, everybody wanted, ISIS would be in charge of all of Syria now. So we need to learn from our history, and toppling and regime change and nation building have not worked in the past. They won't work in the future. The ultimate victory there is going to be when civilized Islam rises up to defeat this barbaric form of Islam that is ISIS.
So let me ask you a question I've been asking foreign policy leaders on both sides of the aisle for the past year. It's provocative, but it's sort of in line with what you say and with what a lot of people say off camera. Would the world be safer if Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and Assad were comfortably in power today?
Yeah. I think it's a mistake to say we advocate for those dictators, but it's also a mistake to say that we advocate for toppling the dictators. I think sometimes neutrality within the Middle East is a better position, but that doesn't, I don't want it to be misinterpreted that somehow I'm an advocate for Saddam Hussein or an advocate for Gaddafi. But I think what we have now is much worse than what we had before.
I was going to say, but their removal has led to a far more chaotic state.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
There's chaos. The chaos is ongoing, but this is a big debate we have to have because every Sunday you'll see on the morning programs Hillary Clinton and John McCain and Lindsey Graham all calling for more regime change and more nation building, and they have been wrong, and we continue to listen to them. We have to wake up.
All right, Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Mark Halpern, we talk a great deal about politicians not